Yeah, I wanted to do a video around embracing your dark side, your shadow, the part that we love to reject. And I know I've done some videos around this before, but I haven't really encapsulated it in a way that I want to bring here. And we always come up with new layers of understanding, deeper ways of realizing truth. And this is the amazing thing with our journey. And I've had a long journey with this, polarizing different ways. And one of the reasons I'm so passionate about the shadow and the dark side and all of this is because I've denied it for so long as well. And so I've been through a journey of denying in different ways as well. I had depression for around 15 years, very, very deep depression. And I don't talk about this much, and I realized this as I was traveling recently. I talk about it in a subjective way, like I had depression and I came out of it and it was X amount of time. And I realized the reason I don't talk about it is because it's difficult to do it justice for the depth that I went into, the darkness that it was. And possibly it relates to what I'm speaking about in this video, is that I don't want to somehow speak about the darkness in that way, because I feel like I'm going to spread it in some way to you guys, or talk about it, you know, in that way. So it's fascinating, and so I'm going to talk about it in this video as well, because it's going to be helpful, I feel, to the concept that I'm speaking about. And when I say I've emerged from depression, this is another thing that I want to talk about as well, is that this idea that we heal things and that's it, it's done. But life isn't about that. Life is about the ups and downs. It's about movement. Everything is temporary. Happiness is temporary. Sadness is temporary. Anger is temporary. Joy is temporary. And one of the issues that we have is that we're seeking these states of what we may be calling peace, or trying to attain states of joy that are unsustainable, because we want these states to last indefinitely. But it doesn't work like that. Life isn't about that. And this is a problem where we keep getting knocked off our spiritual horse that we're getting on, of trying to get somewhere and trying to get to these states, like whether it's an Eastern way of enlightenment or a Western way of ascension. You know, these are seeking these states. And yes, we may have come from these states, from these other worlds or other dimensions, and we remember it. You know, I definitely can relate to that. There's parts that deeply remember this and know what's possible, which is incredible. We know it's possible. We can feel it vibrationally. And yet we're here on the earth plane, which is very, very different. And when we don't understand what the earth plane is about, we can continuously reject it and find it very, very difficult to be here. And we will see it as a place of suffering. We'll see it as a place of chaos. We'll see ourselves as constantly doing something wrong, as we keep getting knocked off and getting disappointed. Yet, for me, peace is the understanding that life is about the light and the dark, continuously, it's a continual movement. And that acceptance, which I'm continuously accepting at deeper and deeper layers, has brought me so much peace from the states of being that I used to be in, both in my depression and after it. And this is what I want to speak about. Because our connection to the dark side, a lot of us polarize to the light. A lot of us unconsciously are polarizing towards just positive ways of being. And this is because largely, for me, what I see is that the spiritual movement has emerged out of a very intensely positive, focused movement on a modern level. Similarly, on a historic level, there is a huge idea that we need to reject the ego, reject the material. Now this is an age-old, well, modern age-old really, expression of spirituality. So a lot of Eastern traditions can talk about dropping the ego. And this was necessary during the evolution of consciousness in our ancient modern times. And I talk about ancient modern times, I'm talking about the last 6,000 years, because there's a whole other era before that. But because in order to anchor spirituality in that kind of consciousness, there was a rejection of the material, rejection of the ego. Many were aesthetic, giving up food. Many went into caves. So it was about getting away from this world to find spirit, And those who did that were anchoring spirit and holding a frequency that was necessary. So I don't see it as anything wrong. I think it was absolutely necessary for those times. Otherwise, why would it happen? And yet we're in a very, very different age right now. We're in an age where consciousness is showing us something different. It's showing us that the body is a beautiful, beautiful expression of spirit. And that's not to say that this wasn't practiced throughout the ages as well, with yoga, with lots of other things. It's just that we're starting to integrate everything right now in a huge way and recognize that everything that comes with it, the expression of the material, we don't need to deny the material to align to our spirit. It's about understanding there's beauty in all aspects, including the ego. And this is a big element for me, and including all of the various expressions of our emotions, which we generally call negative, such as anger, such as jealousy, such as manipulation, such as fear, doubt, whatever, all of those expressions. And so what happened for me as I was experiencing my depression, just to give you a little backstory and my own experience, was that I had this very deep experience for 15 years, from about 9 to 24. And I remember these times, these dates, because it was just, this is a time that was so intense. And it was incredibly difficult. It's like mental, emotional torture, not just daily, moment by moment. And they say that, you know, time flies when you're having fun. And the opposite is true when you're in this darkness. And this isn't to compare our suffering and to say which is better, which is more, you know, who has suffered more or less. I feel it's all relative. If you suffered, if you felt suffering, you suffered, you know, it's all relative to our own experience. And for whatever reason, and I know some of these reasons, but I chose to experience incredible depth of darkness, which was relentless, and I couldn't get out of it, continuum, and it was very suicidal, because that was the only way that I felt I could escape from this. And whilst I was spiritually open, and this actually led to more issues for me, because I felt very different and disconnected from everyone around me who was living what I saw normal, healthy lives, who are happy, because that's what you see when you're in these states. You see everyone else that's happy. And when I was about 17, so this is halfway through my depression approximately, I started opening up to spiritual development books, which is very early on, you know. And so I started exploring all of this, and I came across what I guess is generally called the positive development movement. Yeah, I also came across the idea of reflection, which is incredible for me, because it started to make me realize that I was instigating events and experiences in my life, but I wasn't ready to understand this on the level that I understand now, and the levels that I'll understand in the future, I'm sure. And so I started to explore this, and a lot of the positive development movement is about thinking positively and moving positively. And there was a lot of movement back then as well about rejecting the ego, which again was coming from my exploration in Eastern movements, about letting go of the ego, being present here. And I find this quite similar, you know, rejecting the ego, rejecting the negative emotions, being positive. And in a way, this is the paradox, this is the fascinating thing about our movement. Generally, many of us embark on this spiritual healing path because we have a trauma, or we're trying to move from a negative programming state into a more expansive one. We do that through opening up to positive thinking, positive belief systems, which absolutely serve us, because being open to positive ways of looking at ourselves in the world serve us. Yet what generally happens as we just focus on that is that we end up repressing the negative aspects of ourselves if we don't integrate the teaching of the dark side with that. And so this is what happened for me. I started to reject the dark within me, the depression and everything. I tried to be positive, and it was making me even worse. So my depression in the last 4 years got even more intense. And I got to the point where it was unbearable. I mean, it was unbearable anyways, but it's incredible looking back to see how I even handled it, actually. I don't think I could handle it, you know, with this level of consciousness. It's amazing how we can handle things from various levels of consciousness. And I'll talk about this in another video about the idea of suffering, because it's very different. Suffering is very different from the states of consciousness that we are at and how we view it in others. We always relate it to our own level of consciousness of what we think the other person is going through. But everyone's experiencing suffering and experiencing reality differently. And even that depth of suffering that I was experiencing isn't something that I could probably handle right now at that level. But paradoxically, I wouldn't be experiencing it because my state of being can't vibrationally match it. What I mean here is that we are able to experience reality very differently from the states of being that we're at. And so what was happening as I was exploring this, I eventually came to a realization through writing. I talk about this a lot. Writing my negative emotions out, my negative thoughts. This, thankfully, came to me intuitively, and I didn't know it was intuitively, it was just a last straw that I had. And I started writing all of my negative emotions without turning it positive. Because I had nothing else to lose. Everything I was trying to be positive before, and here I just wanted to, it was more like a rage against the universe, rage against everyone. And as I did this, something incredible started to happen after, it took me a few months actually of doing this. I was writing daily, morning and night, where a shift, a powerful shift started to happen. And I don't think it needs to take months now, because consciousness has changed. But what was happening, I realized that I was rejecting the dark completely, and I was rejecting my ego. And I started to realize that the ego is another part of me that I was, how could I say that I was unconditionally loving myself, which is what I was trying to do, without loving all parts of myself unconditionally? That includes the ego, that includes all of the negative aspects of me. So I had to explore the negative emotions and the ego. And for me, what I feel very strongly is that the ego is a beautiful part of ourselves, and I actually see it as a traumatized inner child. It's the inner child that has come here and experienced life and trying to survive and creates these belief systems, and also takes them on, adopts them from our family, our parents, our environment, society, so on. How can we blame it for what it knows? It's just trying to protect us. And as I started to look at it this way, I tapped into a much deeper, stronger part of me that was beyond the stories, and it was helping to hold my inner child, my ego, in a very different way. So I brought my depression, I brought my ego, I brought my negative emotions closer, which was contradicting what I was being taught by these various principles and teachings externally. And I explored this in many videos, but I'm bringing this up again, and I'll put some links to these videos if you want to go deeper into this. And what happened was that I started to move out of my depression very quickly. And when I say quickly, it was 8 months, but it was, 8 months compared to 15 years, that was quick for me. And everything started to change. And yet what happened is that whilst I was looking at these emotions and whilst I was thinking I was embracing my dark side, that was my first article, Embracing a Dark Side, I began to polarize to the light in a massive way, because in this movement what was happening is I started to embark in this theme of the spiritual bypass. And the spiritual bypass is where you, and I've done another video on this, is where you literally bypass the human emotions in favor of the light. So whilst I felt I was facing my dark, I felt that it was over, I'd done it. I'm out of my depression, now I can just focus on building my life, expanding my life, and going this upward ladder of ascension, evolution, consciousness. Because deep beneath all of that was still this underlying idea that life should be beautiful in a very positive way. And that I've moved out of my darkness and now it's going to be continuously positive. I was totally unaware of this, but it was influencing everything. And so the spiritual bypass is something that I explored for quite a while. I'm sure many of you have or are. And it's something that I think we all are, because we're learning how to integrate. It's not something, with everything, it's not something that we just move out of. Same with depression. I get depressed every now and then. And that's why when I talk about depression here, and I wanted to speak about, and this is what I realized with the spiritual bypass and why I kept getting knocked down after my depression, is that we have this idea that in spirituality, to be spiritual or to be conscious is this ever continuous evolving state of happiness. We have this idea that to be happy, to be our idea of peace is a state of beauty, perfection. We're dancing around in fields, we're endlessly happy. And yes, this may occur in other realms, dimensions, who knows where we come from, or it may be our idea of what that is. But either way, we're here on the earth plane, and the earth is about the whole range of emotions. And I feel that a lot of suffering that occurs for many of us on this path, let alone when we're unconscious of spirituality itself and who we are and our spirit, a lot of the suffering is because of the denial of what is, the reality of what is, the denial of our emotions. Emotions are energy in motion. They are meant to be expressed and moved and embraced. We're always talking about releasing emotions, rather than just accepting them for what they are, because we're constantly trying to escape from something, escape from these emotions, escape from these experiences, escape from this situation, because we find them so difficult. And this is what suffering really is about. Suffering is a rejection of what is real. And so I came into a much deeper realization around this again over the last couple of months as I was traveling, is this deeper acceptance of what is here. Can we accept the reality of the emotions that we feel and be with them without trying to fix them, without trying to remedy them, without saying that we will get better in a month or 2 months or whatever we're experiencing? Why can't we meet these emotions and be with them? They have so much to teach us. Anger has incredible amount of wisdom to teach us, and we deny and repress them so much because we think it's unspiritual. And many people, I hear this again and again, there's a fear of exploring these emotions because we fear that we're going to manifest them further. Yet we are always manifesting from that conscious and unconscious, continuously. The difference is here is that you're making the conscious, you're consciously becoming aware of the unconscious by exploring it, by delving into your dark side, by writing it out or sharing it or releasing as well, through expressing. And releasing really, here I mean by expressing in a cathartic way. But really on a deeper level we're accepting, we're saying, okay, this is part of life. Life is about up and down. Everything is temporary. Sadness is temporary. Happiness is temporary. Anger is temporary. Joy is temporary. And so what happens is that we start to realize that everything is temporary. Everything is a movement, a river that is moving. Can we accept that? Can we be okay with that? Can we let go of this idea that ascension is around the corner? Enlightenment is our goal. What if our goal is to be here now, be with everything? This is much more challenging and difficult than everything else that we're doing, because to be here now means to accept what is happening here now, to accept where we're at, and not try to be anywhere else. It doesn't mean that we don't have the movement, the action to create in our lives, but it means that we are letting go of the movement to somewhere, consistently searching, which I feel many of us are lost in. It's in everywhere, in the way that we think and feel, especially in the West. There's a deep, deep, deep conditioning to be somewhere, the goal-orientated lifestyle. And it's infiltrated our spirituality, because in a way spirituality has emerged through Western consciousness for all of us. And I'm talking about Western consciousness here, but really it's everywhere. And so can we be here now with these emotions? Can we allow ourselves to dive in? Can we allow ourselves to accept the unacceptable? Can you allow yourself to accept the fact that you don't accept yourself? What does that mean? Can you allow yourself to be okay with the fact that you don't love yourself? This is a reality of what's going on. We don't actually love ourselves. Can we be okay with that and be okay with the fact that we don't? Starting to accept the critical parts as being there, the insecurities, the dark side, all of the crap that we've got going on this side. Can we accept the flaws that we have? Can we accept that we don't accept the flaws that we have? This is powerful wisdom, powerful teaching, that as we open ourselves up to, it takes us on a journey. And this is what I feel so strongly as I started to open up to this is that it's taken me on a journey of deeper and deeper states of love, deeper and deeper states of self-love. Yet I'm not in a state of incredible bliss or happiness all the time. I can have that with an experience. So yes, I love the universe, I love everyone, I love everything, I love myself. Yet, that is temporary. It's a temporary state of experience. And then we feel shit. We have an experience that takes us out. Somebody annoys us, we want to throttle someone. There's all kinds of stuff happen, and then we think, oh no, I can't think like that. That's not spiritual. I better not tell anyone I think like that. They better not know that. I'll just express all the happy side and how much I love everyone and everything. This is a polarization, extreme polarization to the light. And what we're doing unconsciously is also programming everyone else that this is the only way that you can be. So it's important for all of us to be more and more comfortable with our dark and to start expressing it more and expressing the fact that we are going through shit quite a lot. And this is what I'm committed to do now, because I realise as I've been talking about a lot of things, I'm not really talking about all of the stuff that I'm going through. And so I'm doing a whole Lightworker series on that. I'm really redefining that. Because a lot of the Lightworker stuff that I move through, being a facilitator on this journey, is about moving through all of the shit and all of the difficulties that I go through in life and all of the hard times and working my way through that. And I think so much isn't talked about, and that's the problem. I talk about it with friends and things, but I've been uncomfortable talking about it in an open way. And because of the roles that we create and the ones that I've created, like the images, the masks that we create that help us feel safe, which I'm becoming more and more aware of now, because I realise that we often talk that we're beyond the mask, or we've healed it, or when we don't have a spiritual bypass anymore. I used to have that, and I don't anymore. And I realise this is another way of masking, another way of hiding from what the reality of what we go through. In fact, it's always there. It's like this whole thing about being authentic. And I could talk about how I feel I'm really authentic now. Yeah, in a year I'll look back in these videos and feel like, wow, you really weren't, you have still a lot to work through. And that's because we're always inauthentic and authentic. It's not to say I'm not authentic right now, it's just, this is where I'm at. And it's about stop trying to be somewhere else, stop trying to be someone else, stop trying to be anywhere further down our path than where we are now. This is constant competition, struggle and comparison with another. We're just on our own journey in divine timing, wherever we're meant to be. And the more that we drop and surrender to here, the more that we find that there's so much Spirit is trying to tell us, whisper to us, that only can be heard in the present moment. That's where it's all happening. It's here. And I constantly need this reminder. I left London last year completely burned out, and for lots of reasons. And a lot of it was to do with this this conveyor belt that I was on, trying to get somewhere, which I thought I wasn't a part of. I thought, I'm following my own heart, and I'm not part of this kind of game. But I was in another game to prove myself, to get somewhere, to be someone. And it was so unhealthy for me, because my spirit was like, hang on, I don't care about any of that. I just want to be. I just want to express what I want to express. It's not caring about all of that stuff about trying to be something. And I was denying it, and it caused me a lot of inner pain, and emptiness was building again. And I went through what I call depression. So when I say depression, I feel that we all go through it. Depression can be an hour. It can be a lifetime. It can be a various range, and the depth range, change with that. And it's a continuous thing. It can happen, and I feel that there's a lot of depression on this path that is unnoticed. It's almost like on this path we can hide from it even more, because we think we're beyond it, because we think we shouldn't even be feeling it. And so we don't really explore it for what it is, and we don't meet this darkness for what it is. It's there. We're trying to be positive. We're trying to be spiritual. How can I go backwards? I've already got onto this path. I've already started my healing path. How can I be so upset again, so depressed again? This is the danger, because then we start denying what's happening, what's really happening. and it starts to build and build, and there's a building emptiness that's going on, and building intense self-criticism. And I feel that many of us are having intense self-criticism from what we think we're doing is healing. We think we're healing ourselves, but it moves from self-awareness to self-criticism. We start looking at all of the stuff inside and going, I've got this I need to fix, this I need to heal. Why am I manifesting this? Must be something wrong with me here, or here, or here. This is very, very self-critical, and it's damaging. It's a destructive way of looking at ourselves. We have to be mindful of being aware that the way, and bizarrely the way of moving away from that, is to actually embrace what we are feeling and go, okay, I feel pain. I'm going to feel this pain now for a few days. I'm going to shut off from everyone. I'm going to feel angry with this person or that person. I'm going to be there. That's what I'm feeling. I'm going to hate everyone for a little time and just be with it. And as we do that, we allow this traumatized inner child, this ego, to express itself. We allow ourselves to move through that emotion and receive the guidance, the wisdom, and the treasures that these emotions are trying to tell us. As I said earlier, like anger often is a place where we're trying to preserve ourselves and show that, are you respecting yourself in this situation or that situation? That's how we get resentment. Just trying to show, look, what about boundaries? How else do we learn if not through the emotions that we're feeling? Everything has been given to us. It's just our perspective of reality, our belief system, that shifts our idea of how we learn. And so if we open to the idea that we actually have all the teaching right here, most, if not all, of our suffering comes from resistance of what is real, of what is happening. So that was a long one. I really wanted to keep that under half an hour, so coming up to half an hour here. And yeah, you know, the tools that I use is very simple. Write your negative emotions out. Be aware of trying to fix it, trying to change it to something positive. You're not going to manifest it more. If anything, you're going to become so aware of it that you fall in love with it. And recognize that when we fear that we're going to manifest it more, that we're being really negative through our writing or through our expression, is that we're fearing what the dark is. And we're also fearing that we can't handle the situation of that dark, of manifesting a dark situation. So we fear, you know, there's so many layers here that we fear that we can't handle a whole side of reality. And the more that we accept it, we start to become okay with it. It's okay, it's going to happen. I'm going to feel great today, I'm going to feel shit tomorrow, and so on. Who knows the way it works. And I'm going to stop trying to manifest just positive experiences all the time, because that's creating so much disappointment for so many who are trying to manifest abundance, wealth, everything, and getting so disappointed when it doesn't happen. I'm going to do another whole video on manifestation, because I feel manifestation is greatly misunderstood. And again, it's opening up to the unknown. I'm not sharing anything here about knowing anyway. I'm trying not to. Just looking and challenging belief systems. And I think this is the way, because as we challenge them, you get to access what you know. And really it's about challenging what we have adopted and taken on. Can we challenge all of it? So really, a lot of what I'm looking at is challenging the existing belief systems and seeing whether it works for you, whether it works for me, whether it works for us, and seeing what happens with that as we explore it. And the more and more and more we open to doing that, the more that we uncover something within that's trying to burst through. And this is what I feel so incredible. It's not that we get a clear answer, but we get a feeling. And that's a feeling of knowingness. Knowingness is very different energy to I know. And knowingness is a feeling of trust, of faith. So thank you all for listening, and I hope this has helped in any way to offer a different perspective for your life. And if you resonate or don't resonate, if it challenges or triggers or opens or takes you on a journey, I hope it does any or all of that. And I'll connect with you all in another video.